So I want you to try an experiment, just for a few seconds. Try to think of somewhere on Earth that's not owned. A place that's not controlled by government or managed by a group or built on by developers. It's something that Secaucus Nobis challenged me to think about.
And it's really hard, isn't it? It's really hard to imagine land is not real estate, or land is not something that's being managed through some kind of treaty, like Antarctica. And even the water, even international waters have rules, right?
It's a really obvious observation, but it's actually kind of mind-blowing too. A person or a group of people own or control every square inch of this planet. And it's almost impossible to imagine what it would be like if we didn't think that we had to manage and control everything. But another thing is also true, that we've done a pretty crummy job of managing, especially here in the state of Iowa, the most biologically altered state in the Union. We've reconfigured, deformed, manipulated, and forced land, animals, and even the chemistry of the natural world to conform to our will. And now we're dealing with the consequences. But there is a different way of relating to the land, a way we'll explore in this episode. This is At the Iowa Farm Table, and today we're going to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, officially October 13th here in Iowa. It's a show that will allow you to listen deeply to two Native Americans who call Iowa home. I'm Beth Hoffman, and this podcast is a production of the Iowa Food System Coalition, a group of more than 50 organizations working together to create a more just and sustainable food system.
Tansi, Mio Ponepitikisigaw, hello, good afternoon. My name is Secaucus Nobis, and I'm a citizen of the George Gordon First Nation. I'm Plains Cree Saulteaux, and I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Amante te vote, Leo senchi manyavo, sini enchi vasai enchi taakai, inepo Mariana kotateak, inepo Iowa po hoak. So I extend my greetings to you. May Creator help you all. It's my pleasure to meet you. My name is Mariana Cota. I am Yaqui. We refer to ourselves as Yoeme, but I'm also Filipino, specifically the ethnic group Kapampangan, and I currently live in Iowa.
I've been living in Iowa City for 20 years this year, and I came here to get my master's focused on Native American religion and culture and a graduate minor in Native Studies, and I am the founder and executive director of Great Plains Action Society, and a mom.
I have not always been in Iowa. I actually came here for my education. I have since graduated with my Master's of Public Health in Community and Behavioral Health.
I was not an American citizen for a long time, and I am now, which helped me feel more at home here. I got my citizenship in 2023. Definitely it's home because I truly believe that my ancestors came down here, traveled into this area because it's the plains, and we traveled, not just us, like natives in general, we traveled far and wide to trade and to meet new folks and to network and all those things and to fight. And I think it's because it's a place that sits between the two biggest rivers in the nation. So there's a lot of movement up and down these rivers. And lately, I feel less at home with what's happening with the federal government and what's happening at the borders, because most of the folks that are coming to the southern border of the United States are Indigenous.
I think this is a very complicated question for a lot of Indigenous peoples around the world. And that's because of forced relocation, displacement, that feeling of being unrooted. I grew up in a military family. Growing up in a military family, we moved around quite a bit. I fortunately have found community who grounds me and supports me here in Iowa. And I think when it comes down to it, the land, the waters, all of its kin, when I enter a new space or place, I really try to tune into that. I'm very aware of what the place has to offer for me, but also what I have to offer to the place.
Between 1830 and 1860, that's when Iowa was taken over by settler invaders who came in and pretty much colonized the entire state, after Indigenous peoples were removed and genocided, or that was actually kind of happening as well at the same time, actually. And they decided to remove all of the prairie roots, the beautiful roots that keep all of this land in place, the land between these two giant rivers, right? Because their idea of what a farm looks like is very different from what Indigenous peoples saw as farming. And so they removed everything that was edible, by the way, lots of edible food. And they planted their own crops, and they row crop them. And unfortunately, Iowa is the most biologically colonized state in the country. And it's the number one contributor to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And the government here is not making it any better.
I don't like to use this phrase, natural capital or natural resources. The framework of private land ownership, that is the kind of language that's used. It's a way of relating to space, land, species, elements in general throughout nature as something that is for us to use, that we have no responsibility to look out for the best interests of them as kin, as beings.
And so I ask, this is the question I ask. Is it farming? Do you consider it farming at this point? Because people will say, well, yeah, big ag's taking over. But it's not just big ag, right? These small farms have also implemented these farming practices now since the beginning. It's providing feed for livestock and corn for ethanol production. And then we import 80% of our food into Iowa. I don't know what's happening here, but I don't think it's farming. What I do want folks to start understanding is, that 600 acres of land that you have, or that 1,000 acres, or even the 20 acres that you own, there was a different way of being on that land at some point, rather than the way it is now.
As a part of my re-indigenization reclamation practice right now is learning our traditional language. Indigenous languages, or just language in general, it's inseparable from the land that it comes from. These languages hold a worldview, they hold systems of knowledge, but most importantly, spiritual connection, and understanding that, we are one and the same with the trees around us, with the grass, the ground beneath our feet, the air that we breathe. The phrasing is different. Instead of saying we own something, we say that we are in relation to something. Also, there's no gender, so it's just kind of removing these aspects that promote division. There is beauty in difference, yes, but underlying that beauty is our unity.
I think that Indigenous peoples knew how to farm, and that Indigenous land stewardship is needed to save us. Rematriation, I define it as getting land back into the hands of Indigenous peoples to steward it with Indigenous ecological knowledge. I see it as well as reviving landscapes to what they used to be so that we can help save our soil, for instance. I also see it as reviving the matriarchy. The matriarchy is exceedingly important if we're going to push back at the toxic patriarchy, which now runs the show. And that's not to say that we have to have a matriarchy, whereas in women run the world, but a matriarchy as in there's an understanding that we look at everything as mothers do, and that we are inclusive, and we make sure that everybody has a seat at the table and they get fed.
Well, food is the most immediate way that we can connect with each other. It's something that we all rely on to live in this world. But food holds a lot of love and culture. Indigenous food sovereignty efforts that are currently happening unblock the disruptions to Indigenous modes of production and livelihoods. And so what that means is growing our own food again. It's not just a healing act, it's an act of resistance too.
I have seen how access to land can make such a difference for people in their healing journeys. I don't like to romanticize Indigenous peoples because, we're living the American experience at the same time as we're Indigenous, right? So we're just like everybody else in so many ways. But there is this ancestral connection to the land here. And there are sacred spaces that many of us, our families and our ancestors are connected to, and people need access to that. It just it's like in your being. It's like it's in your fiber. And I think that to share land would be a very healing process for those that own it all as well, because I know that there's a lot of guilt and there's a lot of overcoming of greed that needs to happen.
I don't know. I feel like Indigenous Peoples Day is a call for Indigenous people in general to remember that we are older than the concept of governmental recognition, of blood quantums, or the ideologies that have been used to dehumanize us and justify our colonization. For me, it's a reminder of if we solely rely on outside validation, it's easy for us to be erased. Indigenous Peoples Day is a day for sharing the stories of survival, but also our defiance.
A very special thanks to Mariana Cota and Sekawas Nobis for taking the time to share their wisdom with me. If you're interested in learning more about sharing land or rematriating, please contact the Honor Native Land Fund. We'll link to it in our show notes, along with information on how to contact Cota and Nobis directly. I'm Beth Hoffman with the Iowa Food System Coalition. We'll have 2 more shows of this season, and then we'll start back up in 2026, and we'll continue our celebration of Indigenous peoples with a look at the Meskwaki Red Earth Gardens in Season 2. Thanks for listening.